I returned the ZVE1. But let's talk about why, because this is going to be a little bit more of a free-flowing notes on the iPhone type video, not a full review, but enough of a review to let you know exactly who I think this camera isn't for, why I like and don't like it, and ultimately why I ended up returning it. But let's start what I like. I love the form factor of this, or at least the idea of the form factor of this. Taking all of the internals of an A7S III and an FX3 and smashing them into a body this small is fantastic. Really lightweight, even if the build quality is a little cheap feeling, it's very plasticky, super light. Throwing it in your backpack, you barely even know that it's there and that it's packing all of those pro level features. And when it comes to those pro level features, things like importing your own LUTs, having that advanced AI autofocus, the cine vlog mode, the follow and tracking mode, all of that stuff is fantastic and completely obliterates the bar to entry for people wanting to create video content at, in my opinion, a pretty reasonable price and a pretty cool form factor as well. But I am returning it, right? So let's talk about what I don't like about this, because that list is a lot longer. While I enjoy the form factor of this camera, I do not at all like the ergonomics of it, which is a shame because they were so close to making this like the perfect tiny little camera, minus a couple things. And there are big things that they would have need to overcome to make this work. Number one, and I know I'm not the only person complaining about this, I miss my dials. I miss my dials a whole bunch. I shoot on the A7 IV right now, but I also shoot on the A7S III, an FX30. I love being able to, at a glance, switch all of my settings. I love my thumb dial. I love the scroll wheel. If I could have just got that first little index finger one on the front to put that towards aperture, this would have been perfect. And if the camera was just a teeny bit taller, I would have really liked that as well. The grip is kind of wonky to hold, and when you pair it with a huge lens, or at least huge for something this size, like a Tamron 28-75, which is one of the lenses I use pretty often, it just, when you grab it, your pinky kind of does this weird thing where it doesn't grab the camera, so you're kind of crab clawing it a little bit. Again, such an easy fix, because if you look at the grip on the A7 IV or the A7S III, perfect, fantastic. You grab it, it's meaty, it's chunky, you know it's there, you're not going to drop your camera. There were a lot of times that I was holding this little camera, especially with a bigger lens on the front, that I had to hold on to it tight. I don't have extremely big hands or anything like that, but it still felt wonky in the hand. So if you're somebody who cares about how the camera feels in your hand, and maybe you don't wear a strap or like a Peak Design clip all the time, something to consider. Let's see. Oh yeah, let's talk about it. The elephant, the 1,000-degree elephant in the room, right? Overheating. And while I do think all of the hubbub on the internet right now is completely blown out of proportion when it comes to the overheating on this camera and just how bad it is, it's not that bad, but it's still bad. It's as bad as Sony used to be if you were around in like the A6300 and the A6500 days. If you're just, doing start-stop type clips, if you're out and about, yeah, it's not going to overheat on you unless it's like direct sunlight and you're filming in high frame rates, right? If you're on a vacation or something like that and you're filming just, 4K 24 or 4K 30, start-stop, in the bag, out of the bag, you should be fine, right? I wouldn't take this camera to the desert and try to shoot a pro movie style piece of video content with it anyway. So for that, not going to overheat. But for what I do, for long form videos like this, for producing podcasts on the go, yeah, it's going to overheat. It'll overheat after a while, right? I average doing 4K 30 in a moderate temperature room, like 75 degrees Fahrenheit. I was averaging about anywhere between 35 and 40 minutes, continuously recording on dummy power. So let's put a pin in the whole overheating thing. Is it there? Yes. Is it as bad as people say it is? No. And depending on who you are and what you're using this camera for, that might be something you're willing to live with, or it might be a deal breaker. That's really up to you to decide. And my last gripe here, not about the camera itself, I guess, but more Sony as a whole, touching back on the ergonomics thing, is, man, I wish they had smaller full-frame lenses. I know they came out with that Mark II 24-70, but like, if you got me a full-frame lens, like even just a little bit smaller than the 16-35 power zoom, I think that's the perfect sweet spot for a camera like this, and like the perfect version of that camera to be able to produce high quality video content while still being small and portable and fun. Who should buy this camera right now? Well, that's a good question, because there's a couple of people I think that this camera is actually perfect for, and if you're one of them, let me know down below if you've bought it already, or thinking about buying it, or on the fence about buying it, selling something else to buy this one. I'm curious to know who the market for this camera actually is, but in my opinion, from the inside looking out, this camera is perfect for anybody who's really ready to step up their video game. If you're coming from an iPhone and you're ready to invest time and a good bit of money into a solid collection of Sony full-frame lenses, you are ready to start using more pro-grade features like S-Log3 with 10-bit color, like importing your own LUTs, but you still want those fun pick up and play features like the Cinevlog, like the, shot remapping. I call it Apple Center Stage. They have another name for it, but it basically tracks you around the screen a little bit, and it's pretty cool. You're one of those people, this is perfect. Go out, buy it, well worth the money. If you're just shooting video, buy it over the A7 IV 100%, if for nothing else than for the great low light performance and zero rolling shutter. I also think this camera is perfect for people who work for brand and do smaller scale video content. A perfect example of this is if you're like a social media manager at a small to mid-sized company and you're doing like on the go, those interview holding the stupid mic type vertical videos, asking people around the office, building video content for the company Instagram or TikTok or YouTube Shorts, but you want it at a higher quality so you have more latitude to post-produce. Perfect camera, this is it. I also think this camera is perfect for people who travel a lot. Now I'm going to put an asterisk there because I'm actually going on a trip pretty soon and I'm not bringing this camera with me as much as I'd like to, because the weight and size it takes up in your backpack is unthinkable for the video quality that comes out of there. You pair this with something like a 16-35 power zoom in your backpack with a couple batteries and a couple SD cards, you're good to go. You can film any type of content you want with that. Talking head, B-roll, city shots. The photos, despite what anybody tells you, they're good enough to post on Instagram. 12 megapixels is more than enough. You're not going to do print editorial work with it, but sharing it with your friends, you're fine. You're good. So if you're like a travel vlogger, van lifer, or just person who travels a lot on their own and wants something that is better than their iPhone, but is still light, portable, and versatile in their backpack, buy this. Don't think twice. You won't regret it. And finally, I think maybe this would be perfect for new real estate videographers. And new is the key word there, because in my opinion, if you're like really taking your real estate videography seriously, and it is your bread, your butter, you're not going to want something that is going to possibly overheat on you, especially if you're filming listing videos in high frame rates. This is not the camera for that. I would immediately tell you to pick up an FX30, even if it's an APS-C, or save up for an FX3, which is, spoiler alert, what I'm doing and why I'm returning this camera. But if you're like new and just getting your real estate videography off the ground, or deciding that, maybe you wanted to shoot real estate, but other types of content as well, this is great. Again, the form factor on this thing is optimal to fly it on a gimbal with like a prime super wide lens for listing videos and stuff like that. You're not going to go wrong with this thing, especially, like I said, very little rolling shutter, so if you're panning, all your lines won't turn into jello. So to wrap this whole thing up, the ZVE1. It is this weird paradox of a camera where it is just too much pro to be considered entry level, and not pro enough to actually play with the big boys. It's operating in this weird limbo where it's like really good for travel people or people wanting to make content with a quick turnaround time at a very low bar to entry. If you don't want to worry about color grading or, shooting in a widescreen format, great. You just throw it into Cinevlog and all of that is baked in for you. For me, for my money, for what I do, for work and creating content here on YouTube, even though it's way more expensive, for my dollar, the FX3 is such a better investment, even if it's something that's way down the road. You're getting the same performance in a bigger body that's never going to overheat, plus you get the XLR handle. The ZVE1 might be the perfect camera for you, and if it is, I'd love to know down in the comments why, what you're using it for, why you're excited to get it. Till next time, take care of yourselves, and always be creating.